That night, rain came down over Seattle like it meant to wash the city off the map. From the 28th floor of a glass tower, I looked down at the streets glowing through the fog, like a network of veins carrying electric blood. In the reflection on the window, I saw my face. Aria Dalton, 34, CEO of BioStream Diagnostics. To the world, I was success personified, precise, unshakable, everything in order. Except for one thing. I lived in a house without warmth. People said I was cold, but when you run a company of 100 people, when every decision carries a price tag of millions, you learn to shut down emotions the way you shut down faulty code. What I didn't expect was that my own home, the one place meant to be safe, would become the lab for betrayal. My husband, Ethan Dalton, used to be a respected financial investor. Now his only investments were in wine and endless afternoons with no purpose. And his mother, Verona, had moved in to take care of me, she claimed. What she really meant was to supervise me, to find cracks, to rule the house she didn't own. Every morning she began with the same line. A woman can be successful, Aria, but without a child she's still just an empty shell. I'd smile lightly and pour another cup of coffee. In my world, silence is observation, and Verona had no idea I was recording everything, not on a device, but in memory, in detail, in the kind of coldness she feared most. One February evening, I came home early from a board meeting. The front door was ajar. From the living room, I heard laughter, Ethan's and Verona's. "This penthouse feels so lifeless," Verona sighed. "Once we have a grandson, we'll move to Mercer Island. That's where real families live." "As soon as this next deal closes," Ethan said, swirling his wine, "we can sell this place." I stood in a dark hallway, invisible, listening to that one word, we. One syllable, and I felt my mask begin to crack. When Verona finally left, I stepped into the room. Ethan startled. "You're home early." "The city fell asleep sooner than I expected," I said, eyes fixed on his glass. "But you're still wide awake. We were just talking about the future." "Next time," I said quietly, "talk about your future, not ours." Then I walked away, leaving him standing under the cold brilliance of the city lights. Later that night, he slept soundly. His phone lit up, a message. "She suspects nothing." I stared at the screen for a long time. No anger, no jealousy, just documentation. I opened my laptop and typed a single line in my internal company log. Unstable signal. Behavioral anomaly detected at home. The next morning, Verona appeared with her mint tea and her poison-sweet tone. "You know, Aria, women who work too much, their bodies forget how to be mothers." I set my coffee cup down slowly. My body never forgets, Verona. It just remembers selectively. Her lips tightened, her eyes flashed. I smiled. The game had begun. At BioStream, I walked into the control room. Data pulsed across the wall, thousands of biological signals blinking in rhythm. A technician asked, "Miss Dalton, should we run another calibration test?" I replied, "No. Just make sure it's accurate when the truth starts talking." Because that's the thing about humans. They can lie with words, but not with data, if you set the sensors right. That night, Ethan said, "BioStream's getting a $325,000 investment soon. I think we should talk about how to use it." I met his eyes. "No need. I'll decide." That single pronoun, I, hit him like a slap. I saw the irritation flicker behind his smile. After dinner, he went to his study, door half shut. His voice was low but urgent. "Don't worry. She never checks the accounts. Once the transfer's through, we're gone." I didn't interrupt. I just pressed record. Outside, rain drummed against the windows, blending with his voice. And in that moment, the truth was born. Near midnight, I opened my laptop and created a new folder. Operation Truth. Objective. Gather evidence of infidelity and financial fraud. Status. Phase 1. Initiated. I set the password. 8 weeks. No one but me knew what that meant because I was 8 weeks pregnant. From that moment, I wasn't just protecting a company, I was protecting a heartbeat. I looked out at the city, rain glinting like lines of code. If dignity were data, I would encrypt it and I would store everything. A thunderclap rolled in the distance. I shut the laptop. The soft click sounded like a vow. Marriage terminated. Operation initiated. Outside, the rain refused to stop. I sat in the dark, looking down at my palm, where faint ink smudges still marked this morning's pregnancy test. 2 red lines, 2 truths, one for the life growing inside me, and one for the man who betrayed it. Tomorrow, I would begin collecting everything. Morning came, and Seattle lay beneath a curtain of fog, thick and colorless. I sat in the bathroom holding the pregnancy test, 2 bright red lines. I didn't know whether to smile or cry. Half of me trembled with quiet joy. The other half went cold with fear. Not because of the baby, but because I knew that in this house every truth could be twisted. I set the test on the counter and stared at my reflection. Outside, rain traced tiny rivers down the glass. I ran a hand through my hair and took a long breath. If I could lead a company of 100 people, I could lead myself. I wouldn't tell Ethan, not Verona, not anyone. This would be a clean secret between me and the life inside me. When I stepped out, Ethan was by the window, phone in hand. Soft morning light slid across his face, making him look like a stranger. I caught fragments of his voice. "Don't worry. I'll make sure she never finds out." He turned and froze when he saw me. "You're up early." "I couldn't sleep," I said evenly. "Who were you talking to?" He gave a weak smile. "Just a client." "A client who knows your bank password?" He went silent. I smiled faintly and walked to the kitchen. The coffee had gone cold. I drank it anyway. Bitter, but true. At the office, I called in our legal counsel, Daniel Cho. When he entered, I shut the door and slid a folder toward him. "Daniel," I said, "I want to review every layer of BioStream's financial access, all signatories, all permissions." He frowned. "Is there a problem, Aria?" "I'm not sure yet, but I need to know exactly who can authorize transfers." He hesitated, then replied, "As of now, both you and Mr. Dalton are listed as joint signatories. If you'd like to amend that, I can prepare the documents today." "Good. The sooner, the better." I paused, looking out at the rain streaking across the glass like veins of light. "And Daniel," I added quietly, "if any transactions are routed through Florida, call me immediately." He nodded. He didn't ask why. He knew I was not the kind of woman who made idle requests. At noon, I went into an unused office and opened Ethan's laptop. He always assumed I was too busy for little things. Mistake. Inside, a hidden folder. New start. I clicked it open. Inside was a plan to sell our penthouse, complete with a spreadsheet transferring funds to another account. Beneficiary, Sierra Hale. The name was unfamiliar. I searched BioStream's HR database. Seconds later, the file appeared. Temporary PR associate, age 29, hired by Ethan 2 months ago. Her photo popped up. Blonde hair, self-assured smile. But one detail made my stomach tighten. Her ID photo was taken in the executive residence wing, an area reserved for board members' families. I took a screenshot, then accessed the office surveillance feed, scrolling back through the previous night. 21:42. Ethan and Sierra walking out together, laughing. Her hand touched his shoulder. He didn't pull away. I watched them behind that layer of glass for a long time. No anger, no heartbreak, just clarity. Betrayal, I realized, is never just between two people. It's always a joint operation. That afternoon, Verona called. Her tone was honeyed and sharp. "Aria, sweetheart, I'm making a special dinner tonight. We should all talk. As a family." I smiled into the receiver. If she wanted a pleasant evening, I'd give her one. My way. That night, the penthouse glowed under candlelight. Too warm, too perfect, too staged. Ethan poured wine. Verona smiled like a saint. I stayed quiet, observing. When Verona reached for a dish, her hand trembled, not from age, but from fear. Maybe she already sensed the air shifting. After dinner, she spoke softly. "Aria, dear, you should take a break from work. A woman must listen to her body, not her ambition." I placed my fork down, eyes meeting hers, light reflecting in both. "What do you mean, Verona?" She smiled gently. "I only worry for you, darling. If there are still no children, Ethan might need someone to carry on the Dalton name." The room froze. I replied slowly, calm, and sharp. "Thank you for the concern, but perhaps you should worry about yourself, because if someone in this house is about to lose their title, it won't be me." Her smile faltered. Ethan jumped in, fumbling to change the subject, but we all knew dinner was the declaration of war. That night, I couldn't sleep. I opened my filing drawer and pulled out a leather notebook. On the first page, I wrote, "Operation Truth, Phase 2, Identify Target, Sierra Hale." Below it, one small line, 8-week child, needs a clean future. I closed the book and turned off the lamp. Outside, rain still fell, softer now, like a whisper reminding me that truth always begins in the smallest details. The night dragged on. I sat by the window, watching lights blur through the rain. From across the room, my phone buzzed, an alert from the security system. Motion detected, 11 p.m. Location, master bedroom. I closed my eyes and took a breath. Phase 3 initiated. Tomorrow, I'd know exactly who was trespassing in my sanctuary. That night, I barely slept. Rain hammered against the glass, steady, rhythmic, like the heartbeat of someone hiding a secret. The faint light from my phone blinked on the nightstand. A notification from BioStream's private security system, the one I'd quietly installed in my home. Movement detected, 11:02 p.m. Location, master bedroom. I sat up, unlocked my phone. The screen filled with grainy footage. Ethan, wearing a bathrobe, stepping into my room. He hadn't slept there in over 3 weeks. I slowed the playback. He didn't look for me, didn't hesitate. He went straight to my vanity drawer, opened it, and pulled out a silver USB drive, the one I used to store BioStream's investment fund plans. My hands went cold. He wasn't just cheating, he was stealing. The next morning, I arrived at the office before dawn. No greetings, no explanations. I walked straight into the security operations room. "Revoke all network access for Ethan Dalton," I said, "and send me the activity logs for the past 24 hours. The technician froze. "But he's your husband, Miss Dalton." "Not anymore," I cut in. "This isn't a family issue. It's a data breach." Lines of code fill the screen. At 11:04 p.m., an internal IP address logged into the investment server through Ethan's subaccount. No anger, no outrage, just documentation. Somewhere in my mind, I heard Verona's voice again. "Women who work too much forget how to be mothers." No, Verona. I hadn't forgotten. I was just learning to protect like a mother, with logic, not tears. At noon, a message came in from an unknown number. Don't trust him. He's copying files for someone else. He's leaving Seattle next week. I typed back, "Who is this?" No reply. But I knew messages like that only came from two kinds of people, a traitor on the same side, or a traitor having second thoughts. I didn't delete it. I filed it under Operation Truth. That afternoon, Verona appeared at the office reception. Slow steps, a gift bag in hand, a smile dipped in honey. "Sweetheart," she said, "I just wanted to bring some pastries for everyone." I met her in the conference room. She looked around, her eyes darting across the glass walls and screens, a woman used to controlling with words, not data. "Aria," she began, "I know you're busy, but women shouldn't be so rigid. Ethan doesn't need discipline. He needs affection." I clasped my hands together. My voice was soft but sharp. "So, according to you, betrayal is just an emotional need?" She sighed, tilting her head. "Men will be men, Aria. If you can't give him a child, maybe let someone else do it. What matters is keeping the Dalton name alive." I stared at her for a long time. Then I said, each word as deliberate as a sentence being passed, "Thank you for the advice. I will keep the Dalton name, but not for your family. I'll keep it for the child growing inside me." Her eyes widened. You're pregnant?" I smiled. "Yes, and don't worry, this child will never know you." The air thickened. I stood and nodded toward the door. "Please escort Mrs. Dalton out," I told my assistant. "I have work to do." Friday. By late afternoon, Daniel texted me. "All access privileges transferred. Assets now protected under your independent fund." I read it slowly, heartbeat steady. I had just locked Ethan out of everything he thought he owned. A few minutes later, his message appeared. "What the hell did you do?" "I can't access the accounts," I replied. "Maintenance, the same kind you performed on my trust." That evening, I returned home. The bedroom lights were still on. On the desk lay the silver USB, neatly placed, as if untouched. He was trying to cover his tracks. But once something is touched, it leaves a fingerprint, and my system recorded every one. I plugged it in. File timestamps appeared on screen. Each copied at 11:05 p.m., right after my motion alert. I exhaled, half amused. His voice echoed in my memory. "She doesn't suspect a thing." "You're wrong, Ethan. I didn't just suspect. I've already started the counterattack." I closed the laptop and leaned back in the chair. Outside, the rain kept falling, steady, deliberate, almost ceremonial. Each drop felt like a marker in the timeline of my campaign. I opened my brown leather notebook and wrote, Phase 3, Surveillance and Target Confirmation, Sierra Hale, Task, Install Home Cameras. I looked up at my reflection in the glass, a face no longer tired or afraid. Now, I was all calculation, all data. That night, I sat by the window, listening to the rain merge with the quiet tapping of my keyboard. Sierra Hale's photo glowed on the screen. Those eyes, the ones that once looked at my husband the way he never looked at me. I whispered, almost smiling, "If you think I'm just an ATM, you're about to find out ATMs can freeze accounts." Tomorrow morning, I'd invite Verona and Ethan to breakfast. And when the kettle started to whistle, the real game would begin. The next morning, Seattle wore a thick coat of gray. The rain hadn't stopped, only thinned, persistent, like a soundtrack for Judgment Day. I woke early, brewed coffee. The bitter scent mixed with the chill in the air. From the living room, laughter. Verona's voice, then Ethan's. I walked out. They sat side by side, cozy, united. Two allies in the same war. Verona looked up with her usual smile. "Aria, dear, you're up. I was just telling Ethan that women who work too much lose their maternal instinct. I met her eyes. And you still believe you have yours? She froze, but her smile stayed. Don't misunderstand, sweetheart. I just worry about you. Maybe you should take some time off. Stress isn't good for a woman's body. Thank you, Mother, I said slowly. But stress doesn't come from work. It comes from living with people who think they're the center of the universe. Ethan slammed his cup down. Aria, can you stop? Mom's just trying to help. I gave the faintest smile. Help? Funny, I thought she was auditioning me for the role of failed woman. The air froze. Verona's voice softened, sweet as honey laced with venom. Ethan just wants a complete family, Aria. A child. But you seem... Her gaze dropped to the cup in my hand. Far too busy with your career. I set the cup down. My career, I said, pays for this entire house. And if you want to talk about children, at least I know who the father of mine is. Verona's face drained of color. Ethan shot to his feet. What are you talking about? I'm saying, I replied, that you can stop pretending. I know everything. Sierra Hale, the Florida account, and your little New Start project. He froze, then forced a shaky laugh. You're imagining things. Sierra's just PR. I opened my phone and played the video. There they were, Ethan and Sierra, in the BioStream office past midnight. My voice stayed calm, but each word landed like a hammer. She kissed you first. You didn't stop her. Then you said, don't worry. She doesn't suspect a thing. Ethan's lips trembled. You spied on me? No, I said. I secured what was mine. Verona jumped in. Aria, this is illegal. Cameras in your own house? Recording people without consent? I turned to her. The law calls it self-defense, of evidence. And trust me, Verona, if the law doesn't protect me, the truth still will. She tried to speak again, but I raised a hand. Enough. I have everything I need. And both of you should know, you have 24 hours left in this house. Ethan shouted, You can't kick me out of our home. I looked at him, voice steady and cold enough to still the air. No, Ethan. This is my home. I bought it before I ever met you, and now I'm carrying my child, not yours. The room went silent. Verona trembled, her eyes wet with rage. Ethan went pale. I stepped closer, speaking quietly. You called me an ATM without a womb. Well, the ATM just froze your account. He opened his mouth to protest, but nothing came out. I turned toward the door. A moving truck will arrive at 8. Take what's yours. Anything left will be destroyed. The door shut behind me with a clean metallic click, the sound of an ending. I stood in the hallway, listening to the rain. It fell heavier now, but inside me everything was clear. I opened my laptop and accessed the security archive. Every recording, every log, every text message automatically backed up to a private server. On the screen, I typed a new entry. Phase 4, completed. Subjects exposed. Asset control, confirmed. Status, continue. Leaning back, I rested a hand on my stomach, the quiet life growing within. We'll be fine, little one, I whispered. Your mother isn't weak anymore. Outside, a train horn echoed through the rain. Long, distant, final. One chapter had closed. And I knew the next wouldn't be about betrayal anymore. It would be about justice. That night, Seattle was swallowed by fog and wind. After Verona and Ethan left, The penthouse felt too wide, too quiet. But in that silence, I heard something else. The sound of freedom breathing. I walked down the hall, each step echoing softly like a clock counting down to rebirth. On the table, 2 cups still bore Verona's lipstick stains. I gathered them, sealed them in a trash bag. No traces, no scent of hatred, just the cleanliness of a beginning. I opened my laptop, checked the home surveillance feed. Every file, every recording, every message, safely mirrored to BioStream's encrypted server. On the screen, the final confirmation line glowed. All evidence secured. I nodded. The campaign had only just begun. At dawn, I left the city. No one knew where I was going. No calendar entries, no messages. Just one email to Daniel, the company's legal counsel. If anyone asks, tell them I'm conducting an internal audit. Temporarily unavailable. Aria Dalton. The car drove me through the misty northern outskirts toward the one place no one knew. My safe house. Once a BioStream testing site for biometric sensors, now it would serve a different purpose. My resurrection. The cabin stood on a wooded hill surrounded by fog and pine. Glass windows mirrored the gray sky and my reflection, thinner but stronger. Inside, everything was bare. A desk, a compact server, a bed covered in gray linen. I powered up the security system. 3 cameras, 1 blinking red light. BioStream's code for a single word: recording. I brewed ginger tea. The warmth spread through my palms, up to my chest, steadying me. After months of lies, this was the first honest silence I'd felt. By late afternoon, a message from Daniel, encrypted. Checked the accounts. Ethan's attempting to withdraw funds from an old joint line. Looks like he's preparing to run. I replied, let him. The farther he runs, the clearer the evidence. I knew the rules. In this game, the impatient always lose. Night fell. Wind slipped through the doorframe, carrying the scent of the nearby lake. I opened my brown leather journal and wrote, Phase 5. Counterstrike preparation. Establish surveillance and confirm withdrawal patterns. The desk lamp threw faint patterns on the wall. In the dim light, I pictured Ethan and Verona, smaller now, stripped of power, clinging to each other like people terrified of losing control. Truth doesn't need revenge. It just needs the right timing. 3 days later, I met Daniel at the old harbor. Quiet, gray, nearly abandoned. He brought a laptop. I found this in the transaction logs, he said. Ethan's in contact with someone named Carter Vale in Florida. They're discussing equity conversion for liquid assets. I scanned the emails. The figures lined up too perfectly. Carter Vale, a false name. Sierra Hale's alter ego. She wasn't just a lover. She was an accomplice. Rain began to fall, light but cold. Can you trace the money? I asked. I can, Daniel said, but you'll need someone inside their system to win. I already have someone, I answered. Me. 4. That evening I returned to the safe house and launched the internal monitoring console. Lines of code streamed across the screen. IP addresses, timestamps, data trails. Then a flicker. 2246. New login detected. Ethan Dalton. Location, downtown Seattle. Hotel network. I zoomed in through BioStream's satellite-linked feed. There she was. Sierra, black leather jacket, standing beside him, holding a company laptop. I captured the images. Digital evidence, the kind that never lies. My voice inside my head was calm, deliberate. Humans can hide their guilt, but data cannot. I saved the file under a new label, Phase 6, because I knew the next step wouldn't be surveillance. It would be confrontation. When I closed the laptop, fog had swallowed the window glass. Streetlights outside shimmered faintly through the mist. I placed my hand on my stomach and whispered, We're not running, little one. We're collecting proof. The wind stirred the pine trees, their whispering almost like agreement. I inhaled deeply and wrote the final note of the day. Day 5. Preparation complete. Tomorrow, return to the city. Confrontation begins. I turned off the lamp and lay down. Darkness filled the room, and rain began tapping gently against the roof. In that stillness, I could hear it clearly, truth approaching. Raindrops kept their rhythm against the glass, like fingers tapping to my heartbeat. I stared at the faint light behind the curtains. Somewhere out there, data was still moving. Packets, lines, patterns, like the bloodstream of a truth drawing near. And I knew, when dawn came, nothing would ever be the same again. Because I'd gathered enough evidence. Now it was time to move, from silence to action. Dawn in Seattle came without light, just a gray smear between night and day. I drove back toward the city, through wet streets and flickering traffic lights that glowed across the windshield like neural pathways. No music, only the wipers, and my own heartbeat. When I reached the office, Daniel was already waiting. He handed me a sealed envelope. "Aria, we've got a new problem," he said. "I found a forged file with your signature." Inside was an authorization contract for the sale of BioStream shares, signed Aria Dalton, dated 2 weeks prior. I studied it. The pen pressure, the slant. Perfect. Too perfect. "This isn't mine," I said. Daniel nodded. "I know, but the bank approved it. Someone used a clone digital signature." For a moment, silence. Then the pattern snapped together. The USB, the Florida account, Sierra Hale. They weren't just betraying me. They were laundering money in my name. I opened my laptop, logging into BioStream's digital signature vault. Each contract displayed its own biometric key, unique pressure and speed patterns, a digital fingerprint. The forgery matched 98.3% of my genuine sample, my own technology, now weaponized against me. I laughed quietly. Justice doesn't always favor the innocent. It favors the one who controls the data first. That afternoon, I walked into the bank. The senior officer greeted me with visible discomfort. "We processed a valid transaction, Ms. Dalton. It had your signature, fingerprint, and PIN verification." "Do you keep voice authentication logs?" I asked. He hesitated, then played the audio file. A woman's voice, my voice, came through the speaker. "I confirmed the transfer. Aria Dalton." The sound chilled me. It was my tone, but not my breath. Sierra had used voice synthesis. She'd worked in PR. She had hours of my recorded interviews, my cadence, my rhythm. "Thank you," I said evenly. "Send me the raw audio and access logs." Outside, the rain resumed. I called Daniel. "He's not just stealing," I said. "He's erasing me, using my own inventions to do it." "If we prove biometric forgery, the law will back you," he said. "Not enough," I answered. "I don't want the law to defend me. I want it to crush them." That night, I returned to the safe house. The room was dark, except for the blue glow of the servers. I played the bank audio through an analyzer, line by line, frequency by frequency. The waveform matched 99% to my real voice, except one microscopic flaw. A missing breath sound at the end of Dalton, a glitch only machines made. I tagged it. Anomaly detected. Synthetic audio signature. Outside, rain began again, heavier, colder. I leaned back, remembering my father's words. "Truth never dies, Aria. It just waits for someone patient enough to dig it up." Near midnight, a new text appeared, encrypted with BioStream's old internal code. They're selling all remaining shares. Second forged signature. 12 p.m. tomorrow, Mercer Street Notary Office. I stared at it for a long time, then stood. Lightning flashed through the window, white and sudden. I opened my drawer and took out the original USB, the one Ethan tried to steal, plugged it in, overlaid the real encrypted data on top of the forgeries. At the bottom of the screen, I typed one line. Phase 6. Inversion. Raindrops slid down the glass like a countdown. 12 hours left. No more hiding. No more words twisted into lies. Because this time, truth had a signature, a voice, and data to back it. I placed a hand over my stomach, whispering, "We won't shout, little one. We'll speak in evidence." The sky outside split open with lightning. I locked the safe house door behind me, the metal click echoing through the hall. Far down the street, rain shimmered under the lamps, each drop marking 1 second closer to noon. Behind me, the servers hummed and blinked, the evidence alive, breathing, waiting to be unveiled. I gripped the wheel, inhaled deeply. Tomorrow, Mercer Street, noon, sharp. And for the first time, I wouldn't just be the collector of truth, I would be the proof. Morning crept over Seattle, dim and heavy, the skyline bowing under gray clouds. I dressed in black, hair tied back, makeup precise, not to impress, but to conceal the fact that I hadn't slept. In the mirror, my eyes no longer shimmered with grief. They were sharp now, 2 blades honed for the truth. When I arrived at the notary office on Mercer Street, Daniel was already there. He motioned for me to stay in the glass hallway. Through the transparent door, I saw Ethan and Sierra sitting opposite the notary. A thick folder lay between them, stamped BioStream Holdings. Daniel leaned closer. "This is the second forged share transfer. If they sign, temporary ownership passes to Sierra. She'll sell everything by end of day." I checked my watch, 11:58, 2 minutes before their game ended. As Sierra picked up the pen, I pushed the door open, metal against glass, a sharp sound that sliced the room in half. They both turned, Ethan's face drained of color. "Aria, you..." "Sorry," I cut in. I just came to reclaim my name. Sierra straightened, voice trembling but still coated in arrogance. "You can't be here. This is a private meeting." I smiled, setting a silver USB on the table. "Then let me make it public." Plug. Projector hums. Screens lit up with looping footage, Ethan copying files, Sierra signing my name, and the forged bank audio with my clone voice. No one spoke. Only the rain, pounding against glass, beating in time with their panic. "This," I said, my tone clear as cut steel, "is digital proof. Every fraudulent act authenticated by the original SHA code, and if you've forgotten, I wrote this system." Sierra went pale. Ethan stammered, You set me up?" "No," I replied softly. "You walked in. I just turned on the light so you could see yourself." Then Verona appeared at the door, clutching her purse, her face twisted with fury. "You're destroying this family!" she screamed. "No," I said quietly. "This family destroyed itself the day it became a stock exchange." Daniel handed me another folder, my real documents, the original ownership and trust papers notarized 3 years ago under my sole name. I placed them next to the forgeries. "You wanted to fake paperwork?" I said. "Fine. I'll show the world that fake signatures still leave real fingerprints." From my pocket, I pulled on a thin glove dusted with silver powder, pressed it against the corner of the paper Sierra had just signed. Under the light, her fingerprints bloomed, a perfect match to her BioStream biometric data. Daniel snapped a photo, already sending it to Financial Crimes. "File transmitted," he murmured. Sierra lunged for the papers, trembling. "Stop! You can't!" "Too late," I said. Cloud backup initiated 15 seconds ago. Ethan collapsed into the chair. voice cracking. Aria, please. I made a mistake. We can start over. You're right, I said softly. We will start over. But not we. I turned to Sierra. You work in PR, right? Then you'll understand how it feels when the entire city sees this video tonight. Her lips quivered. Next time, I told her, choose a career that doesn't leave fingerprints. Because in my world, truth has structure. 2 hours later, it was over. When I stepped outside, the wind off Puget Sound was sharp enough to sting. Daniel walked beside me in silence, then said quietly, You won, Aria. I smiled faintly. No. I just reclaimed what was already mine. We paused at the corner. The clouds hadn't lifted, but between them, a thin silver thread of light. Not sunrise, just the first flicker of justice. When Daniel left, I stood alone on the sidewalk, watching strangers hurry past under umbrellas. My phone buzzed, a system notification from BioStream. Upload completed, evidence secured. I slipped the phone into my coat pocket and drew a deep breath. Rain mingled with cold air, clean, sharp, alive. Part of me wanted to cry, but tears felt extravagant. Emotion was a luxury in a world ruled by data. Under the streetlight, the silver USB gleamed in my hand. It wasn't just a piece of metal. It was a key that unlocked truth. Behind me, the people who once saw me as expendable scrambled to save their reputations. I didn't look back, because when you spend your life protecting truth, there comes a day when truth turns around and protects you. I crossed the wet intersection, reflections rippling beneath my boots. Seattle's sky was still dark, but along the horizon ran a strip of molten light, the beginning of something new. A new era, built on data and signed by my own hand. That night, I didn't go home. Instead, I drove through the rain-soaked industrial district until the glowing BioStream logo emerged from the fog. One light, still burning against the city's silence. Inside, the main server hummed softly, the sound steady and alive, like the heartbeat of truth itself. I plugged the silver USB into the security port and began the final upload. Forged documents, the Florida transaction records, the notary office footage, the synthetic voice file. On the monitor, the system confirmed. Upload completed, case file generated, Operation Justice. I stared at those words for a long moment. A part of me wanted to stop there, to rest, to let the evidence speak for itself, but another part, the one they called an ATM without a womb, whispered back, No, this time it must be seen. By morning, the entire data package had been sent, anonymously, to the Seattle Police Department, 2 tech news outlets, and the State Financial Crimes Bureau. Within 10 minutes, my phone exploded with calls. Daniel's came first. Aria, you didn't. I did, I said. If they don't understand limits, I'll teach them through law. An hour later, the news broke. Breaking, biotech executives under investigation for digital forgery and financial fraud. Suspects, Ethan Dalton and Sierra Hale. I sat in my office as the morning light crept across the glass. Colleagues passed by quietly. No one asked questions. They didn't have to. Everyone knew. Truth had changed hands. By noon, Verona appeared in the lobby. Her hair was disheveled, face pale. Aria, she gasped. What have you done? You're destroying the Dalton name! I stood at my desk, calm. No, Verona. I'm cleaning it up. She stepped closer, trembling. You'll regret this. The press will crucify you. And that baby. I lifted my head, my eyes like steel under glass. My child will never know the people who belittled its mother. And you should thank me for not turning in your part of the collusion. She froze, color draining from her face. You called me a money machine that couldn't bear children, I said softly. Well, look at me now. I just gave birth to a case file. She said nothing. I turned away, leaving her standing alone beneath the harsh white lights, small and powerless for the first time. That evening, Daniel sent an update. Ethan Dalton arrested at the airport attempting to leave the state. Sierra Hale surrendered herself. Assets frozen under court order. I read the message. No joy, no revenge, just peace. A heavy, grounded silence built from justice, not rage. I turned off my phone and poured a glass of water. Through the open window, rain drifted in, mixing with the hum of the server. In my brown leather journal, I wrote the last line. Phase 8, collection complete. Status, transparent. Then I placed a hand over my stomach. It's over now, I whispered. From here on, we don't live in fear. We live in truth. Outside, the city went on as if nothing had happened. Cars honking, people lying, loving, betraying. But in this small corner of Seattle, I knew at least one part of the world had been cleaned. Rain tapped against the window again. Lightning flared, reflecting my face in the glass. Tired, but free. Operation complete, I said softly. But justice has just begun. I turned off the lights. The only glow came from the server, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. The heartbeat of a woman who had rewritten her own story. Outside, rain kept falling, long and slow, as if the city itself was exhaling. In the quiet blue of the server light, I listened to the soft rhythm, steady, deliberate, each blink a pulse of truth finally released. I laid a hand over my belly, feeling the faint warmth of life within. Justice never comes late, I whispered. It just waits for the right person to carry it. And just when I allowed myself to believe it was over, my phone buzzed on the desk. A new system alert flashed across the screen. Unauthorized access detected. Server room 04. My breath stopped. Justice hadn't rested yet. Someone was still trying to erase the truth. I stood up instantly. Outside, the wind howled harder, hurling rain against the glass like a warning. I grabbed my keys and coat, drove through the storm, the streets of Seattle empty and glistening, the city sleeping like a beast that could wake at any second. When I reached BioStream's headquarters, the basement lights were still on. The elevator descended to the lowest level, the door sliding open into a gust of cold air. That sterile mix of metal, ozone, and faintly burned circuits, the scent only people who live inside data recognize. The smell of a crime being accessed. The door to the server room was ajar. Keystrokes clattered from inside. I stepped closer and flipped the lights on. Harsh white light flooded the room. She turned. Verona. She froze, face pale, hands trembling around the USB drive. Aria, you shouldn't be here. So you were part of it too, I said, calm and low. She swallowed hard. I just wanted to protect my son. Ethan couldn't handle losing everything. I only meant to delete a few files. I stared at her, pity curdling into disdain. You protect by destroying evidence. You once called me heartless, Verona, but I've never faked love to justify a crime. She said nothing. On the screen, the deletion bar climbed -82%, 83%. I lunged forward and yanked the power cord. The room went dark. The cooling fan stopped, leaving only the sound of two women breathing in the red pulse of emergency lights. You just committed obstruction of a federal investigation, I said evenly, and I'm turning you in. She broke, grabbing my hand. Aria, please, he's still your family. You can't let Ethan go to prison. I looked down at her shaking grip, then gently pulled away. Blood isn't a shield. You once taught me that honor can't be bought back. I'm just living that lesson now. I called Daniel. Bring the forensic IT team. I've caught someone trying to erase the evidence. Verona sank into a chair, sobbing silently. I didn't look at her. Instead, I reconnected the system and began rebooting the data restoration. On the screen, letters appeared line by line. Recovery in progress, 96% restored. I smiled faintly. Truth, I whispered, always has a backup. Chapter 2012. An hour later, police arrived. They escorted Verona away, her face hollow, her eyes pleading. I stood in the corner, arms crossed. Daniel approached quietly and laid a hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing, Aria. But it won't be easy. Nothing right ever is, I replied. If justice comes cheap, it isn't justice. He nodded. Outside, dawn broke. The first light spilled across rows of blinking servers, like fireflies flickering through a digital forest. After they left, I remained alone. Among the hum of machinery, I whispered to the air. Tonight, we didn't just protect a company. We protected structured truth. I opened my brown leather journal and wrote, Phase 9, recovery complete. All data intact. Crimes authenticated. Trust rebooted. Closing the book, I took a long breath. In the reflection on the dark monitor, I saw a woman who no longer needed forgiveness because she had become the guardian of justice itself. Outside, morning light pierced through the gray. It glinted off the rows of machines, filling the room with a metallic glow. I stood in the center, hands trembling from exhaustion but strangely calm. Everything had been restored. The evidence was in the hands of the law. And for the first time, I didn't need to run. I stepped outside, wind slapping my face with the chill of rain still hanging in the air. Seattle was waking. I thought the story was done. Then my phone lit up. A message from an unknown number. You think justice ends in court? He still has people inside the system. My grip tightened on the wheel. Outside, the sky darkened again. The operation wasn't over. 3 weeks later, Dalton versus BioStream opened at King County Court. The name Aria Dalton was everywhere. Headlines calling me the CEO who sued her husband and his lover for fraud and forgery. Across the aisle, Ethan's legal team used the only defense they had. They turned the victim into the villain. They said I was a manipulator, that I fabricated evidence, that I was power-obsessed. I sat quietly, one hand resting over my belly, feeling a faint heartbeat beneath my palm. Outside, the media roared. Inside, every gaze landed on me. Daniel leaned in, his voice steady. You ready? Yes, I said. They think data can be twisted. They forget. I taught this system how to detect a twist. Judge Monroe entered, gavel striking wood. Court is now in session. The prosecution began with evidence, the notary office video, the synthetic voice recording, bank documents, and the recovered files Verona tried to erase. When the fake recording played, the courtroom fell silent. My voice came through the speakers, flat, hollow, lifeless. I rose. That isn't me, I said clearly. I have a frequency analysis. Synthetic voice tech can't mimic air consonants at the end of words. This, I gestured to the screen, proves it. Daniel pulled up the display. 2 waveforms, one real, one fake. The difference? 0.7 hertz. But that 0.7 hertz was the sound of truth. The defense objected, but the judge accepted the evidence. The courtroom stirred. Ethan dropped his head, eyes avoiding mine. Sierra began to cry, whispering something the mic didn't catch. Daniel continued, showing the email Verona had sent to the bank, marked urgent transfer. Her signature was clear. Verona Dalton, acting on behalf of BioStream Holdings. The judge turned to me. Ms. Dalton, would you like to speak? I stood. Your Honor, I don't want revenge. I want preservation of something I've always believed, that truth has structure, and if we allow fraud to live inside data, the whole world will collapse, line by line. The room went still. Judge Monroe nodded solemnly. The court will recess before sentencing. In the hallway, rain tapped against the courthouse glass, Seattle's signature backdrop for justice. As Verona was escorted past me, her face was pale, eyes mixed with anger and regret. "You've won, Aria," she said quietly, "but you've lost everything." "No," I replied. "I've lost illusions. What's real, I still have." By afternoon, the verdict came down. Ethan Dalton and Sierra Hale, guilty of fraud, forgery, and corporate theft. Sentence, 12 years in prison. Assets seized and restored to BioStream. Verona Dalton, probation for cooperation. When the gavel struck for the final time, I closed my eyes. Not in triumph, in release. Daniel smiled faintly. "You did what few ever do. Took down a system with the very code you built." "I didn't destroy it," I said softly. "I rebooted it." That evening, I stepped out of the courthouse. The sky glowed gold beneath the clouds, the wet pavement reflecting shards of light like broken glass. I breathed in the cool air, hand resting on my belly, and smiled. Justice isn't loud. It's punctual. My phone buzzed, a message from Daniel. BioStream fully restored. Shares returned. Welcome back, CEO. I looked toward the skyline, glass towers glimmering under the fading sun. Somewhere in the wind, a familiar truth echoed. Dignity matters more than money. For the first time, I truly felt free. The rain had finally stopped. Seattle seemed freshly washed, as if the city itself had stood trial with me. I paused at the courthouse steps, sunlight spilling through clouds, dancing across the wet stone. Everything that needed saying had been said. Everything that needed proving had been proven. I turned and walked away, carrying with me the echo of the judge's gavel. It didn't sound like an ending. It sounded like beginning. A breeze swept through, scented with wet iron and magnolia. Seattle still had shadows left to uncover, but I, the woman once burned by lies, was finally walking toward the light. A month after the trial, I returned to BioStream headquarters. The building looked the same, tall glass panels reflecting the gray Seattle sky, hallways silent as if waiting for their first command from a new owner. The nameplate outside the executive office had been changed. CEO, Aria Dalton. Steel letters, cold and deliberate. Inside, the faint scent of new paint mixed with coffee. The smell of a life freshly reset. Daniel was waiting in the conference room, holding a folder. "Here's the new contract," he said calmly. "We're reopening the research fund. This time under a different name. Project Heirloom." I opened the folder. The project description read, "Developing DNA-based security architecture. A model of personalized justice." I smiled softly. "Justice. By biological design," I said. "Fitting." The weeks that followed blurred into lines of code, server hums, and quiet nights under fluorescent light. At night, I went home to a small apartment overlooking Lake Union, the city lights rippling across the water like flowing data streams. I was learning how to sleep again, not with pills, but with peace. One evening, while checking system logs, an email arrived from the Seattle Police Department. "We've used BioStream's voice-matching software to verify several financial fraud cases. A program you built is saving people." I read that line over and over. I had created the system to fight betrayal, and now it had become a weapon for real justice. Later that night, I stepped onto the balcony. Seattle was quiet, dusted with a thin drizzle that shimmered under the streetlights. The wind tugged at my hair, carrying the scent of salt from the bay. I thought about Ethan, Verona, Sierra. 3 people who once tried to rewrite my story through lies. But I had done something they could never comprehend. I turned pain into code. Every line I wrote now carried a rhythm, the pulse of truth, of resolve, of a woman who lost everything and chose not revenge, but reconstruction. One morning, Daniel walked in with a report. "Revenue's up 17%, he said. Heirlooms being nominated for a National Innovation Award. I smiled. Not bad for a company everyone thought was dead. He hesitated, then asked quietly, "Aria, do you ever regret it?" I looked out the window. A thin layer of mist drifted across the lake, reflecting a pale blue sky. "No," I said softly. "I only feel grateful, because if they hadn't betrayed me, I would never have learned the strength of a truth with a backup." That evening, I shut down my computer and left early. I walked along the lakeside path, the air cool and damp with the scent of grass and water. A boy, maybe 7, ran past me and looked up with a bright smile. Something in that smile loosened the weight in my chest. I touched my stomach. It had begun to round, small but certain. A life growing inside a world I had fought to cleanse. "You'll grow up in a world where data doesn't betray people," I whispered, "and where women don't need permission to believe in themselves." As evening rain fell soft as breath, ripples spread across Lake Union, golden reflections shimmering like living code. In the window's reflection, I saw not the betrayed woman, not the fallen CEO, but someone reborn, a woman who had rebuilt her life through justice. I closed my journal and blew out the candle on my desk. A thin trail of smoke rose, curling into the damp night air, and in that drifting gray haze, I saw the past dissolve, and from its ashes a new beginning taking shape. One crisp autumn morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual. Seattle was unusually clear. Glass towers gleamed beneath a pale blue sky, dry streets lined with golden leaves spinning in the wind. The elevator doors opened onto an empty corridor, my footsteps echoing softly against the marble floor. On my desk sat a white envelope, no name, no return address. Only one line printed in italics. "You can't erase a system. You can only teach it." I smiled. I knew who sent it. Ethan had written that line years ago in his first research paper, back when we both believed technology could redeem everything. Inside the envelope was a black and white photograph from a prison library. Ethan reading, head bowed. At the corner, a handwritten note in blue ink. "Aria, I understand now. The system never betrays anyone. It only mirrors its user." I folded the photo carefully and slid it into a drawer. No anger, no tenderness, just the quiet weight of expensive lessons. By midday, Daniel knocked on my door. "Someone wants to see you," he said. A young woman stepped in, dark hair, steady eyes, nervous smile. "My name's Maya. I'm a tech journalist. I'd like to write about Project Heirloom." I nodded, gesturing for her to sit. As she took notes, I told her about the early days, the failures, the code that saved lives, the invisible wounds behind innovation. Then she asked, "Do you think your revenge is complete?" I glanced toward the window where sunlight refracted through a glass of water, turning it into a breathing prism. "No," I said. "I never sought revenge. I just recalibrated justice." She paused, then asked her final question. "Do you believe in karma?" I smiled, voice calm but certain. "Yes, but karma isn't magic. It's the algorithm running quietly beneath life. And when the data's ready, the outcome appears." That afternoon, I left the office and paused on the bridge overlooking the bay. Rain had returned, soft, steady, like a heartbeat. I thought of my child, of those chaotic nights of corrupted data, of Verona's eyes in the holding cell, full of regret. Everything had come full circle, but I was no longer spinning inside it. I stood at the center now. Dignity matters more than money, I whispered. Truth has cameras and signatures, and karma, it's never loud. It just arrives on time. That night, I reopened BioStream's main console. Across the screen, lines appeared in soft blue light. System operational. Data integrity 100%. I turned off the lamp and stood in the glow of the LEDs. Everything that once terrified me had become the architecture of peace. I placed a hand over my belly and closed my eyes. The baby moved, a tiny pulse inside a binary world of ones and zeros, wrong and right, lies and truth. And I knew which side I had chosen. I looked straight into the security camera and smiled. If anyone's watching, remember this. Justice doesn't need belief. It only needs proof. The lights dimmed, leaving only the rain against the glass. Steady and cold. Seattle slept. And somewhere in that city, a woman had rewritten karma in binary. If you're still here, thank you for staying until the end. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what you believe in more, karma or justice. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs to remember. Truth has structure, and dignity always arrives on time.